Believe it or not, the impact of statins on cardiovascular inflammation is starting to take some tiny steps into the mainstreams of medicine. Here's one of the first ones. Department of Cardiovascular Medicine, University of Oxford. In current pharmaceutical designs. That was back in 2012. Again, this has been building. Statins as anti-inflammatory agents in atherogenesis. The molecular mechanisms and lessons from recent clinical trials. So, a couple of points that they made in here. Plaque generation is an inflammatory process. Yes, we've been saying that. 3-hydroxy-3-methylglutaril coenzyme A, HMG-CoA. What, gosh, really big word, but it's the enzyme that these things impact. It's the HMG-CoA reductase inhibitors. That's what statins are. They impact that specific enzyme. But they do some other things too. But that enzyme is what has gotten the medical community originally focused on it because it had an impact of decreasing LDL. Anyhow, statins have been used for primary and secondary prevention of cardiovascular disease for a long time. This was even as of 2012. And remember, primary prevention is there are no signs or symptoms yet. Secondary prevention is there are clear signs or symptoms. If you want to get a little bit more understanding about primary versus secondary prevention in cardiovascular disease, that's a very important topic. For example, it's an important topic with baby aspirin. Recently, they said, no, we don't recommend baby aspirin for primary prevention. I never did. Many of us never did. The Bale-Donine community didn't. That's actually where I first heard of that. But here's the difference between primary and secondary prevention. If you get a CIMT and you have plaque, you now have a clear sign of cardiovascular disease. So don't say, okay, I'm 65, I haven't had a heart attack yet. They don't recommend baby aspirin for primary prevention anymore. If you have plaque, and most 65-year-olds do, they do recommend it as well as we do. So again, this item of primary and secondary prevention sounds very simple, but once you start digging underneath, it has a big impact, a very practical impact. And it's a little bit more confusing because even most doctors don't understand the difference between primary and secondary prevention, especially for cardiovascular disease. They approach it with an assumption that we can't tell if somebody's got plaque. We just need to assume. Big assumption. And not a good one. So anyhow, I'll get back to the script here. Evidence supports another big word, pleiotropic effects. You remember, for those of you who don't remember that word, you may have a little bit of background, or you may have heard of the Pleiades. That's a constellation. It's the 7 sisters or many sisters. That's what pleo means, many, and tropic. So what pleiotropic effects means is effects on something that weren't really planned the first time, something that we didn't know about. That's exactly what's going on with statins and cardiovascular inflammation. When statins were originally developed, it was thought, okay, it's all about LDL, the quote, bad cholesterol. And according to this article, again, back in 2012, statins reduce circulating C-reactive protein. You remember that one? And pro-inflammatory cytokine levels. Again, just the whole biochemical mechanism for inflammation. They also induce favorable effects on vascular redox. Redox is another technical term. It's a mashup of reduction, oxidation. Remember oxidation? It is probably the biggest underlying mechanism for inflammation. So it impacts the redox state, the reduction oxidation state, and improves vascular reactive oxygen species.